Thanks for watching this tutorial, Azure AD with UserSync. This is actually a two-part tutorial. We'll use our UserSync functionality to synchronize users from Azure AD into the Atlassian application. And then in the second part of the tutorial, we'll actually set up SAML authentication of our Jira app against Azure AD, so that those users that we synchronized into the Atlassian application can actually authenticate as well via single sign-on. In the first part, we configure Azure AD for UserSync. So we'll set up an application in Azure AD, which is nothing else than creating an API connection that we can connect to Azure AD and read user data. Then we configure our UserSync functionality in Jira. And afterwards, we kick off a synchronization and verify it works. Now I'm in Azure AD and I'm logged in as an administrator. The first thing I need to do is go to Azure Active Directory and then app registrations. And we need to create a new registration for UserSync. You see on the right of the screen, I've actually made some notes in my notepad of stuff that I have to do. All of that is also in the step-by-step guide on our website. I just have it here to the right that it helps me guide through. So I'm going to go to new registration now. Give it a name. It's going to be for accounts in this directory, and I need to enter a redirect URI, and that's the URL I have here on top as well. So I'm going to say copy link, and then I paste that down here, and I say register. So it's created an application, and now I already get some information like the application ID and the directory ID that I need later on in the UserSync site in Jira. So I'm going to copy that quickly to my notepad, copy the application ID, paste that here, copy the directory ID, and paste that here. And the client SQL we get in a later step. So the next thing I need to do here in Azure is to give this app API permissions. So that will be the permissions that we can execute through this app endpoint. So I'm going to go to API permissions. And you see I made a note on the right which we need. So some delegated permissions, user read basic all, and some application permissions, directory read all and user read all. So now I need to find them and add them. User read is already there. So the next one would be add permission, Microsoft Graph, then delegated permission, and now I need user basic read all. User read basic all, that's this one, add permission. And I need the other two application permissions now, still Microsoft Graph, application permissions. And then the first one is under directory, read all, this, and user read all will be under user. And then I say add permissions. So, and now we have given this application in Azure all the permission it needs for us to be able to read the contents of a directory, groups, users, group memberships, etc. The next thing we need to do, we need to create a client secret, which is essentially sort of our password to use across this API connection. So I'm going to go to certificates and secrets, new client secret. Need to give it a description. Let's say expire never, then add. And now it's created a secret down here, which I can copy. So I'm going to copy that, put it here in my notepad as well. And that's actually all the things we need to do to be able to synchronize users on the Azure side. And once you already installed our app, if you go to Administration, Manage Apps, you'll find the two menus, SAML Single Sign-On and UserSync on the left. And the first we need to do is go into UserSync to set up that synchronization. So I click on UserSync. And UserSync has the concept of connectors. So every connection to a third-party system via the API is called a connector. So we need to create a new one, and it's of the type Azure connector. And now we can create our connection to Azure. And you see in connector setting, it asks for application ID, and that's what I copied here. So I'm going to do a bit of copy and paste here now for a second. Application ID. The tenant directory ID is the next one. And then last but not least, the application secret or client secret, how Azure calls it. And that is all the information we need to connect to Azure. Now the next thing we can do is click the authorize button. That will redirect us to Azure, give us a normal OAuth permission consent screen. And then after we accept those permissions and give our consent, it will redirect us to the connector here and will be authorized. So I'm just going to quickly do that, authorize. You see, I'm going to select the right account for our demo. You see this is the consent screen, access to data, read all user profiles, read directory data, accept this and then accept. And then we go back with authorization complete in our app. So from now on, we can actually start pulling data via this API connection. I'm just going to scroll down for the user sync settings. If I want to enable schedule synchronization so that it happens on a regular basis, which is what most people will do, I can just check this box. Down here in the cron expression, the default is to run this once an hour. I can modify that. That's a normal cron expression. And you need to play a little bit on your system what you want to do. If you've got a very, very large Azure account, some of our customers have 100,000 people in there, then the synchronization will take quite long. So once an hour is way too often. The same if you have a couple hundred people, then you might even want to do it every 15 minutes. That's really down to you. I think once an hour is a good starting point for most. That will work for most people. I'm also going to show you one thing in advanced settings. So if I go to show advanced settings, you can actually see there's a lot more you can customize there. But that's not part of this tutorial. So I'll show that in some other tutorials or in the documentation or read through this. But there's one thing which I find important to know for everyone, which is this groups mandatory to sync a user, required groups section. If you go here and add a group name from Azure in there, then only the users in that group will be synchronized into Jira or the Atlassian application. So if you have something like a Jira users group in Azure AD, and you have 10,000 people in Azure AD, but only want your 200 people in the Jira users group to get synchronized into the Jira application, then add this Jira users group or whatever it's called in here, and then it will only synchronize those. You can actually see there's a lot more features around group management. If you're interested in any of those, read those things, look at documentation or further tutorial. I'm not going to go into them on this high-level initial one. So I'm not going to do that. I'm going to save now. And you can see it created this connector here. It's never synchronized. The next synchronization would be at 4 p.m. on the hour. And we don't want to wait that long, so I'm going to manually kick off async here. And then you see it's start is running, created 10 users, 22 users. So it's synchronizing the users now. It'll take a couple of seconds for the 39 users that we have in Azure. And it's all fine. So I can close this now. And I'm essentially done here. Let's just quickly go to user directories. You can now see the users and connector created this Azure directory of the type internal. So it will behave like any other directory in the Atlassian application. You can move it up and down in the search order like any normal directory. If I just go to users now, you can actually see there's a lot of users that have been synchronized in that are part of the Azure directory. Okay, that concludes the user sync part of this tutorial. Now we're getting to the second part of this tutorial. In the first part, we synchronize the user so that they exist in our Atlassian application. And now in the second part, we actually configure the SAML side of our plugin to be able for these users to log in and be authenticated via Azure AD. We kick off in Jira in our plugin with a couple of steps. Then we swap over to Azure AD and create an enterprise app in there that's used for the SAML authentication. Afterwards, we swap back to our plugin in Jira, complete the setup there, and also verify the setup that it actually works. And that then completes the whole tutorial. So let me go to Jira. Here in Jira, we go to Administration, Manage Apps. And again, on the left side, you have SAML Single Sign-On and User Sync. Now we go to SAML Single Sign-On. And if you start our plugin for the first time, it will come up with this welcome wizard. And the thing we want to do here is add a new identity provider, i.e. our Azure. So we click on Add New IDP. We select the IDP type. We have already predefined quite a few. So go down here and scroll down to Azure AD. Give it a description. And then down here, there's also the link to the documentation of the step-by-step guides. It's exactly the same as the video, just with me, without me talking, and screenshot it. Use whatever you like best. Then we go to next. And now the plugin actually shows us all the data that we need to have to complete the setup on the Azure AD side. If you left all default settings like we have here, those 3 URLs are exactly the same. If you have changed something on the service provider settings in the plugin, they may not be the same. Then watch out, and you have to copy and paste the right ones into the right field. So I'm going to go to Azure now. Again, being logged in with my admin account, I go to Enterprise Applications now. Create a new application. And I need to search for resolution. And then I see our predefined apps in the application store already. And since we're configuring Jira here, I'm going to select the SAML SSO for Jira. And I need to give it a sensible name that I can find it later again. So yeah, demo Jira. And I say add. So this might take a couple of seconds now for this app to create. And here we are. It redirected us to the configuration page of that app. So the first thing we have to do is go to Single Sign-On and select the Single Sign-On method. In our case, that will be SAML. So I click on SAML. And then you see a lot of things are already pre-configured by our template. There's only a few things we need to add. So I click on the Edit for Basic SAML Configuration. And here we need to paste the URL, replace this with the URL we just copied. The same for reply URL. And the same with sign on URL. And then you can say save. Okay, we can close this. No, I'll test later. I'm going to go a little bit down. Here is the app Federation Metadata URL. So I'm going to copy that because we'll import that in our plugin later. And then there's only one more thing to do here, which is go to Properties. Scroll down to User Assignment, where it says yes, change that to no, and say save. That means everyone can use this integration. And that's it on the Azure AD side already. Since we have it in the catalog, a lot of stuff is predefined, so I think that's a relatively easy setup. So I move over. Oh, by the way, also to mention, since we're in the catalog, it also works with the free and the Office 365 free licenses. Otherwise, you would need to have a premium account in Azure AD for those users. So I'm going to go back to our Jira plugin now. Go to next. And here it asks me for the metadata URL, which is the one we just copied. Paste it and say import. You see metadata import successful, so it imported a lot of things that we need to know for this integration. We go to next. Now the plugin asks us if the name ID, which is SAML speak for the username, matches the username in Jira, which it does at the moment because we synchronized all our users from Azure into Jira, having the username being the same, so we don't need to change anything here. It also asks us for the user update method, and what we can do here now is to select the user sync connector and select the connector Azure that we created before, and then say save and next. What this actually, just to explain that for a second, what that actually means is whenever a user logs in, we go out and refresh the user's information from Azure. So it makes an additional API call pulling that user information, which is quite good, especially if you don't synchronize every 10 minutes, then things might have changed. So when a user logs in, we actually refresh that information. So I'm going to go to save and next. And that's it. So we've already completed the setup. So the next step would be to test this, which is what we want to do. So I'm going to say start test. And now this creates what's called a authentication tracker. An authentication tracker for us is something that we've created that keeps everything around an authentication together. So basically you see a couple of fields here, and those fields will fill as the authentication happens. So it's a really, really good troubleshooting and support tool or test tool like here. So I'm going to copy this special URL it created. Now I need to open this URL in a private browsing window so that I'm not authenticated yet and run through the whole process. So I'm going to go to the private Safari window I have here, paste this URL, and essentially hit enter. So you see I get redirected into Azure AD after hitting Jira. I enter our lab account name and the password. Sign in. No, I don't want to stay signed in. And now I actually can see it logged me into Jira. So the dashboard will appear in a second, and I'm logged in as the user, and you can actually see I'm this user CR local 1. That's pretty much all. So let's go back to our Jira site and let's see what happened in this authentication tracker. We can actually see the login was a success. You can see it extracted the user ID CR local 1, logged it in, have a couple of debug messages here. And if I go down, you actually also see the login information, basically what we have been sent via SAML from Azure AD, down to the first SAML message, second SAML message. So you can see that is a very useful troubleshooting tool. And if something goes wrong in this stage, just by the way to mention that, you can actually click on collect support info with this tracker, and that will then download a JSON file which contains the plugin configuration without any private keys. And the information we've seen in this tracker, and if you attach that to a support case with us, that'll give us a lot of information already to help to determine what the problem is. We don't really have to do that here because it was a success. So we can go to next now. So this is the last screen you'll see from our plugin. Anything we have done so far has not interfered with any user's authentication. So we had to use a special URL to be redirected to the identity provider and test this. So you could say save and close now, and then it would stay that way, and then go back and enable this later on in the maintenance window. Or if you actually check this box and enable SSO redirect and then say save and close, from that point onwards, all your users will be redirected to Azure AD. So save and close. So and we're done. From now on, all our users will be redirected to Azure AD for their authentication. The users have been synchronized in via user sync, so that's all done. The only thing left for me is to say thanks for watching this tutorial. I'm Christian Reichert, c.reichert@resolution.de. I'd really love if you get in contact. You see our support URL, resolution.de/go/support. You can also book free screen share sessions. So if you want us to help you along with the setup, or you have a more complicated case and want to discuss it first, then absolutely feel free to go to resolution.de/go/calendly. And then we'll set up an hour with you where we can talk this through or guide you via screen share through that installation. That's one of our preferred methods because it's an easy way to get a success for you and get you the configuration that you like. Also, feel free to visit our marketplace page, resolution.de/go/marketplace, where you find out more about the apps that we have, also all the other apps. So again, thanks for watching this. It's really been fun, and I hope to see you again.